left in a hurry today.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. George Graham Planning and Zoning Board, we're here to conduct the city's business tonight for items that are on our agenda. And we will hear non-agenda items at the end tonight. If anyone in here has any comments, it's not on the agenda. Mr. Huffines, I would like to welcome you for your expertise up here now. Thank you, board. Thank you a lot for applying.
It'll be fine.
I'll take a roll call now before we move on any further and just for a quorum. Mr. Wooten.
Here. Here.
Chair Dean Ward's here. Mr. Chrisman.
I'm here.
Mr. Huffines. Here. Huffines, I understand you've already been sworn in as a member. Yes, sir. All right, if you would, everybody please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I entertain a motion for the minutes of last month for someone to.
So move. I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's start with the old business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a request for a text amendment. Oops, I keep hitting this thing, sorry. There it goes. So a member of City Council has proposed the language in your packets to create standards for arts and crafts studios with a new definition and also subsequent revisions to the permitted uses table. Staff has worked with the city attorney to remove and revise the text to avoid potential inconsistencies in the uses that are listed. And staff has added a note to the permitted uses table to prevent some of the more intensive artisanal uses that involve smoke, fumes, heat, etc., from creating issues in a downtown district. This item was previously tabled 60 days by the planning board at the March meeting, and that was to allow the city attorney additional time to review some of the concerns brought up at the past meeting as far as procedure goes. Staff and the city attorney have gone through these amendments and have attempted to distinguish them from similar uses in the manufacturing so that they may be more akin to business than industry. And staff's recommending approval of this. And so you can see that we've got this definition now for arts and crafts studio, the workplace of an artist, artisan, or craftsman, including but not limited to carver, painter, sculptor, weaver, studio craftsmen such as pottery, metalwork, weaving, wood turning, paper, and other forms of woodworking, glass blowing, and glass art. I added this sentence. This definition is not intended to allow industrial scale production or manufacturing of these items. Those are covered separately in the permitted uses table currently with other uses listed. So that will help distinguish the definition so that these would be allowed downtown as a craft use or as a display type of use, retail use, but not an industrial scale manufacturing use. And we have also defined metal fabrication, the industrial process of manufacturing sheet metal and other flat metals to make them conform to specific shapes through cutting, stamping, shaping, folding, and welding. Again, this is going to fall under that industrial scale process. And the permitted uses table, we've added arts and crafts studio with the added note 25, which discusses the smoke, the noise, and things that would typically be associated with a industrial scale use. They are now allowed if approved, in the B3, B2, B1, conditional business, the I1 district, the CMXR, and CMXC. Land use code would be a 3. And when you go down to manufacturing, you'll see there's similarities in some of these, like fabricated metal products, glass products from purchased glass. Some of these again, those are distinguished as being large-scale industrial manufacturing uses as opposed to those that would be more akin to a downtown environment. So that's the distinguishing characteristic. Scroll faster here. And here we go again. Note 25, following performance standards apply in order to retain the character consistent with that of downtown. That's the dust, the dirt, the fly ash, and other air pollutants, electrical interference, heat and glare, landscaping enclosures. These come directly from the other parts of the ordinance. We simply copied and pasted them into this part of the ordinance. And that's all I've got for you.
Okay, before we go any further, I don't think I have a potential conflict, but I wanted to disclose it. My company has done business with the gentleman back here who occupies the building on Main Street.
Miracle Metals?
Yes.
Okay.
And I just want the board to know that I'm not presently doing any business with him, nor is he on my payroll or am I on his payroll? And I will recuse myself if you like, but I feel like I could maintain and be impartial with the decision.
I have no problem with that.
No problem here.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, let's,
Since this is old business, should Mr. Huffines recuse himself from discussion on this item, on these next two items?
I was going to ask the board's thoughts on this because we didn't rule on anything. We tabled it for 60 days. And there's been numerous changes made that we haven't seen until this point today. What is the board's thought and what do they think about Mr. Huffine sitting and listening or even voicing an opinion in this?
Fine with him contributing however he sees fit.
I have no problem.
Mr. Huffine, do you feel comfortable jumping in and getting dirty right here tonight? Okay, is your microphone?
Yeah,
on?
I was gonna check, see if your mic's on.
So
There's
let's
a
switch
little
on the
button on the
side,
side there.
on the side. Yeah. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem.
thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't sure whether Mr. Chrisman's question was with regard to this item or a later item.
No, it's just the old business.
We're just talking old business in general, Mr. Bonner. Okay. Anybody want to start off with Justin with any questions before I open the public hearing and see if anyone from the audience wants to or come before us and talk about it? Has anybody got any questions with Justin before we get to the open meeting?
Not yet.
May I just ask that this is the one for the condos?
No, it will be later, but not presently.
Okay, just wanna make sure it's not-
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing and anyone in the audience that would like to talk about this particular ordinance, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Cameron Miracle. And
I'm sorry, what was your name, sir?
Cameron Miracle, I'm one of the owners of Miracle Metals. And I'm just trying to figure out why it is so hard to do business in this town. We're just a small business. We're not a manufacturing company. Make yard art. Art. I don't understand, like. I mean, I'm furious. It's America. You're putting a thumb down on the little man. We're self-made. We've never had to ask anybody for help. This is garbage. That's all I have to say.
Wait just a minute, sir. The process here is really to, I know it seems like everybody's been pushing and pulling against you, and we delayed it for 60 days to let the legal team take a look at it. But I think the overall picture here is good for your business. Yeah, you are gonna, if this board adopts this and the council adopts it, you will be able to proceed forward with what you're wanting to do. But over the years, the city has developed development ordinances that drive what can go in certain areas and what zoning districts. And since this was a item that had never been posed to the city before, there wasn't a specific table of use there for art. What you do, and I've seen what you do and your company does. I've seen your operation in your garage there, how you cut this out. And it takes talent to do that, because not only do you have to be mechanically inclined with your hands, you got to know how to run that computer to program all these cuts in there for that device to cut this stuff. So it took a lot of eyes and a lot of people having an opinion to come up with 62 pages here, and a small portion of 62 pages specifically about art. And I understand the repercussions and what you think, that everybody's against you. I don't think nobody here is against you. I think it feels that way. And if I was in your shoes, I'd probably feel that way too. But I think that the staff has reached out there and really took some time
And we appreciate that.
looking at what they developed here, and hopefully there's a positive outcome for you tonight. But does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Cam here?
Not at the moment.
I would like to ask Mr. Miracle, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. With what I've seen by passing, I've not been in your shop. The language here that they put forth, I think you may be looking at it a little through maybe rose-colored glasses. In that, I believe what they're trying to do, in fact, I know this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to smooth the path to allow your type business. Okay. As Chairman Ward said before, when they drew up zones and areas to do business, they didn't have the forethought at that time to put out a certain area for art and the type work you did. It's brand new to us.
Right.
I think it's exceptional. I think it's a great add to the atmosphere of downtown Graham. And I'm hoping that you have great success down there. But I believe if this is adopted, it will enhance your business, and it will cause you to go back and reflect that, hey, they are trying to help. That's all I have to say, sir.
I'll reserve my comment till later.
Alphonse?
I'd just like to agree with both my fellow board members. I've had the opportunity to listen to this as it's moved through planning for the past few months. And I'll agree with Mr. Benesh. There was not a place to fit your use in the city's ordinance, and it has just taken some time to craft that. And I think that you will find that the operations that you have and the ventures that you and your wife are working on are now going to be accommodated as an artisan in the downtown Graham area. And we're grateful that you're here.
Let me add to that. I would agree with the other board members. I think that what you're doing, the arts and crafts, the artisan studios, these are going to be excellent additions to Graham and the culture and life of the Graham. And I would encourage that. It's just would add that I think a lot of this is trying to make a differentiation between that which is arts and crafts and that which is industrial uses. And so we're trying to not only protect you and give you a good box from which to work, but also take the citizens of Graham at large. Make sure that we don't allow something that really doesn't have any business being in the downtown area. And so we're trying to look at it from both sides of the coin. But yeah, I would encourage you that this is, I think this is a pretty good attempt to get you what you need.
Justin, I have a few questions.
Sir?
Page 22.
Okay.
Under Arts and Crafts Studio, number 25.
Mhm.
Let's talk about this item number A,
Okay.
dust, dirt. fly ash and other pollutants. When you say dirt, I mean, there's dirt everywhere.
These are on an atmospheric scale. You're not going to have to worry about a use like his. that
Okay.
Might have a little bit of dust outside the building every now and then. We're talking big, huge industrial fans blowing it out into the atmosphere.
Okay,
But great question.
I'm good with that. And
And that's pretty much applicable all the way down the line.
okay, on item number C, the glare. Now, if anybody knows anything about welding, and I think most people have seen it before, there is a bright light that emits. And the same with this cutter that I've seen at his shop.
You'll never see it.
You'll
out
never
in
see it
his
in that
garage.
building. That's what I
There's
wanted to
no way.
stress, that you'd never see that. But I was just concerned that the language there, that wasn't going to prohibit him
Nope.
down the road for having his door open.
No, I've seen his business and everything. There's nothing that's going to be out of compliance that I can find based on how this is written.
Justin, with this, I had something of the same concern about how limiting this would be. In pottery, you're going to have some smell from it. How
Some smell?
significant? Other things, woodworkers, I mean, you're going to have sawdust flying around. Is this going to be limited? I hear what you're saying about this, not an industrial scale, but we just want, is there any need to make it more specific than this?
I mean, you guys can make any changes you want. We just pulled this language from the existing code based on what it's to distinguish what an industrial use would be. These are in the industrial section, and these are what's already in the code. So we just copied and pasted. So to me, any of these things would be industrial levels, not a little bit here and a little bit there. There's always room for subjectivity in how we perceive things, but like a pottery studio, are you going to smell it 3 buildings away? Probably not. You might smell it right outside the building, but chances are it's not going to go too far. Or maybe if the wind blows that day, you might catch it 1 day out of 7. But I think we're looking for those items that are completely objectionable to public health, safety, and welfare. So if the noise is just at god awful levels like an airport, it probably doesn't belong downtown. If there's radioactivity, that one I can't really say. We probably shouldn't allow anything radioactive downtown, but the other ones, speaking to your point, I think we're looking at large scale operations. We're not looking at a slight perception of certain things.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that we don't want to get locked into any kind of an interpretation that would limit us in the future.
Well, you won't have that with me. You might have that with a future planning director.
Yeah, that's
way
kind of what I'm
to-
thinking down the road. Somebody might come along and have a different take on the subject.
So to that effect, perhaps in that lead-in sentence where it says the following performance, I should say performance, not performances. Performance standards shall apply in order to retain a character consistent with the character of the downtown. Maybe we could expand on that somehow, some way, with some language that you guys can craft that would help distinguish that down the line. I'm completely open to suggestions.
Mr. Huffines?
One of the items under 19 subpart E, enclosure, it appears that the language requires these operations to be inside anyway. So dust collection, the glare, those items, I think they're going to be mitigated just simply by being inside.
Could we maybe say that this should not apply to incidental or something like that, things that are incidental to the interior use of the building or something like that? I don't know. I see what Chad's saying, and he's correct that the indoor nature of this will take care of most of it. I don't know.
That'd be a good
Great
discussion.
question, but
A good discussion
the
point.
language, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Justin, is there anything in the codes about filtration systems for these type of businesses?
Air filtration systems, no. So typically those things aren't really a zoning type of use,
Mhm.
but you know, it's more of a fire code thing, building code.
Just was curious because of sometimes odors
Mhm.
can be contained or filtered.
Certainly.
If you have a lot of grinding, for instance, it gives off a certain odor.
There's a smell, yeah.
Sawdust as well, if you're doing woodworking. And you're located next to, now I don't know about your neighbor, Mr. Cameron, you're located next to a restaurant. So you never know what that guy might feel. And then again, you may complain about the smell of his food. So it could go both ways. Just curious on the filtration.
Yeah, I just don't want it to get where, you know, we're in a he said, she said fight
Exactly.
over something that's could easily be resolved with a knock on the door, you know.
Yeah, got you.
Mr. If I may have a moment, Mr. Merkel, this is part of the process that you seem to be upset about, is that we don't, that this is a new adventure that hasn't been discussed before. And before we pass anything or put anything into the ordinance, we've got to consider all the ramifications of our verbiage. So if we put something in, it might stifle somebody or it might cause some unintended consequences. So that's part of the process. It seems like it takes so long and so much red tape, because, you know, not only do we have to protect you, but we have to protect the rest of the people in town.
Good way to look at it is we could pave a road right now, but we
Right.
really want to get the foundation right before we do
Right.
it.
I understand.
Any further questions for Mr. Murphy? Anyone else in the audience have any comment or discussion they would like to bring to the board's attention?
Hugo Kreischer, 2005 Cherry Lane. The question is, if a business such as himself was a different type of business, say it was a woodworking
Okay,
or, oh, I'm sorry, or woodworking or something of that nature, does he have the ability, or does other organizations that come into play have the ability to do any type of, because I'm all about kids. Are they allowed to do any type of educational, like a workshop in the facility at all, or is that against?
That's precisely what this is designed for.
Oh, it is.
It's to open it up so that there can be educational tours, there can be
Nice, okay.
demonstrations, things
Look at
like that.
that.
So with candy shops, show
Okay.
you how to make taffy.
Okay, cool.
He could show them how to use the plasma torch. You know, there's all kinds of things that you could do.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. I'll close the public comment this time and entertain discussions here amongst the board before I ask for a motion. Mr. Christmas, you want to start it off?
I'll just go last if I could.
Okay. Mr. Huffines? Any further discussion for the staff or the board here?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Benesh?
and not really, there's a few small verbiage maybe here and there, but I don't want to get it too regulated, so to speak. So
And I may have a solution to Mr. Wooten's comment. What if we put the words industrial scale? So there should be no industrial scale emission of dust, dirt, fly ash gases. There should be no industrial scale electrical disturbances. There should be no industrial scale heat or glare. And just do it that way, where it's very clear that we're talking about industrial scale operations to once again help distinguish that.
I do like that, but how do you classify
Classify
what's
industrial,
industrial
How do you
versus?
specify?
I mean, if he works 24 hours a day up there, does that make him industrial?
No,
you'd have
If
to
he's-
have clarification.
makes them a hard worker.
Right, if he's punching out 100,000 cuts a month, does that make him industrial? I don't want to,
That's a great, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think a way
How
to,
do you quantify
how do you
what?
quantify? Well,
Quantify it.
I like the idea and I think that's great, but how do we quantify that?
Just large scale.
the other option is to remove section 25 entirely and just leave it up to code enforcement to respond to a customer or to a complaint.
Now, I don't want to tie your hands, and I think that if we took that out and we leave it up for interpretation of what you guys, I think we're creating more of a problem than having some kind of guidelines to go by.
Yeah, I think the guidelines are the better way to go, but
Yeah.
I don't know the great solution, other than just to interpret it the way I would interpret it, which would be pretty loosely.
I mean, I think it's,
I think large scale would be better than industrial.
I think large scale too, and then
But then you got to define large scale.
what's large? More than so many employees, more than,
You don't want to put on
On-
employees because we don't want to discourage businesses
Oh,
from
yeah.
coming downtown and hiring people.
well,
I could see a cabinet shop, going into one of those Main Street
Mhm.
buildings.
And putting on.
You might
slacker or
have 20,
something.
25 employees. But is that industrial? Is that large scale? Or is that fine furniture, really nice artisan type furniture? How do you differentiate?
That's
How do
right.
you quantify?
It's hard.
I think the difference there, Mr. Wood, would be custom. Either custom making a cabinet or custom making a piece of furniture.
Well, the point is how, just using that as an example, pulling it out of thin air, what would be the parameters around which you would define large scale or industrial scale as opposed to arts and crafts? I think it's a very touchy issue that we could get into. When it's open to interpretation and could be some abuse there.
tied to annual revenue,
What's that?
tied to annual revenue.
But if you got somebody that's really successful, you don't want to stifle their business.
Right, exactly. So I
it
wouldn't,
keeps getting us back to
Yeah,
the
that's,
same question.
well, that's the same kind of question. If Cameron's selling things for $1,000 a pop, now I don't.
That's right. He could get up to $1 million easy
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's
he
what we
could,
want.
he
We
could
want
very
him to
well
sell.
easily exceed what would be considered large scale.
That's right.
But
We
also-
want him to outgrow his shoes downtown is what we
Right.
want. But
Could we look at the word significant perhaps in front or after the word no before the following adjective, which would then allow us to give staff some flexibility? No significant in my mind means there's no huge heaping pile or plume, but there is a reason to sweep up at the end of the day.
it's a good adjective.
And that allows the subjectivity that I think we're trying to achieve without an emphatic none, or without trying to quantify industrial or large. Let's just say, and it applies in several of those subparts, A, B, and C, following through to H. And that gives a little bit of interpretation.
But
which
the
is-
word significant,
For instance, in item H, if I did odor, there shall be no objectionable odors. There shall be no significant objectionable odors. And insert that into each one of those where we're having trouble wrestling with that terminology. And then that lets us have some flexibility and give it back to the folks in practice and the code enforcement.
And when Dean's on the board in 30 years, we'll be able to say, I remember we talked about this.
Dean's not gonna be here in 30.
Significant, man.
so it allows the fish to get as big as he can within the fish bowl, but it doesn't go
Yeah.
outside the perimeter.
Yeah, I like
Good
Mr. Hopper's
idea.
suggestion. I think it would at least partially accomplish what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, I think it's closer to the target. I still think there's some room for interpretation, but I don't know what you're going to put down there. That's not going to be
I think it's good to have some interpretation.
Yeah.
Um,
some little wiggle room. Yeah.
Little wiggle room is a good thing.
Anything further?
Like,
Ms. Truffides, want significant and after no and all these, all 10, 11, 12 of these.
to be A, B, C, H, I, J, K, and L.
A, B, C, H. Maybe we should discuss J, because of your knowledge of grinding and smells come out of that. That's subjective as well. Maybe that's a good place to do the significant as well in item J.
J is actually a quantifiable.
It is quantifiable, that's correct, similar to what,
So not J.
similar to what G is.
I think that would cover it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so just across the board to have it specific.
So we have A, B, C, and H is what I'm.
And to add to the minutes of this, for a good definition, or significant, basically, having or likely to have influence or effect. So if that's included in what we're proposing, that shows a lot of meaning as to what the word significant is there for.
Mr. Boney?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to figure, if anything happened to I, J, K, or L in the process of stuff.
The J we covered was,
J is quantifiable.
It seems to stop.
J was qualifiable.
Quantifiable. I is also quantifiable. What was the other one you were talking about?
K and L.
So I think they're all quantifiable in some way.
Yes. Mr. Huffines, Mr. Christman, you got anything further?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. That'd be all right.
Certainly, I was gonna let Mr. Huffines, but
Well,
then certainly.
I've got comments like while I'm third.
Okay, good.
I have no objections to I have no objections to this text amendment. I think Graham is potential to become an attractive location for artists to set up pottery, craft, yoga, and now metalworks. Unique boutique shops, studios will help attract a more diverse and divergent clientele to Graham. Hopefully these studios will, like you do, Cameron, Mr. Miracle, is doing, have workshops. You have to have a grind and paint. Have workshops that will attract more and still a more wide and diverse clientele to downtown. My problem, as explained in the staff report, was the way this thing was proposed. I've spoken to the city council about it, that this language didn't come from Mr. Miracle. It's the first time we've seen you. It came from the city council itself, and the city council has proposed the language below. And they presented to the planning director a cut and paste text amendment, and I don't think that's the right procedure. And I realize that the majority of the city council is new, the mayors do, and they're charting new territory. But their organizational learning capacity is still in the formative stage. And as citizens of Graham, we have to trust that their actions and their intentions are not for self-gain or aggrandizement, but for the benefit of all the citizens of Graham. Organizational learning capacity has 4 parts: leadership, organizational culture, learning mechanisms, and dissemination mechanisms. Effective leadership is important. Institutional knowledge or organizational culture will be gained as time passes, but it's necessary for the learning mechanisms to effectively seek and have the ability to seek staff and outside counsel for problems that might arise, and how that is presented to the public to avoid any apparent conflict. It's important for this board and the city council to be extremely transparent in the businesses we conduct. This building is owned by the mayor. There's city council members that are either current or former employees of the mayor and don't want to put any appearance of impropriety that might come up with that. It's also imperative that the fourth estate perform its sacred duty to be the people's watchdog. That economic factors not be a determining factor on what is not being published. With that being said, in compliance with the 2035 comprehensive plan, 2.1.3 economic resilience, 2.1.6 locally owned businesses, and 2.3.1 a vibrant downtown. I'll make a motion that we approve.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Christmas. Second,
Second.
I was fixing to add with the,
And may I ask, were we adding in Mr. Benesh's definition for significant,
But significant, yes, on those.
having or likely to have influence or effect?
Yes, that's my mistake. I will not repeat everything I just said.
Thank you.
It's- Who said that?
Not I, sir.
That with the changes on A, B, C, and
H.
H, significant.
I'll second it. And Mr. Wooten seconded also. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous, thank you. Justin, I would like to see in future agenda packages to the planning board members, statement of consistency.
Yeah, we were
Added.
talking about that recently, and that will be in your future packets. I think I might have captured it for the Walker Place, but I did not go back on the two text amendments, and I apologize for that.
Thank you, sir. Ready for the next item, Justin?
Thank you, sir. So this is another text amendment. A member of city council has proposed the language to revise the standards for public and private flags, feathered advertising flags and banners. Staff and the attorney have worked the proposed language into each applicable section of the Unified Development Ordinance. The amendments would allow under circumstances feathered advertising flags and banners, which would help assist our business community while offering standards for maintenance and upkeep to try to prevent excessive cluttering, dangerous or unsightly situations. This item was tabled by the planning board at its March meeting to once again allow staff to work with the city attorney to review and resolve potential constitutional conflicts in the proposed language and to review the submittal procedures, as Mr. Chrisman alluded to earlier. We have tried to do that. We have, with that member of city council and also with the attorney, have come up with the definitions. So a feathered banner would be a lightweight portable temporary advertising medium mounted on a pole that resembles a feather shape. A feathered flag would be a lightweight portable temporary advertising medium mounted on a pole that resembles a sail. A private flag would be any fabric or other flexible material that is attached or designed to be attached to a pole or similar device which represents or symbolizes a business, organization, or a group. And then a public flag would be a flag displaying the name, insignia, emblem, or logo of any official nation, state, or municipality recognized by the federal government of the United States of America. And then moving down, section 10.393, we added in that it shall comply with the provisions of sections 10.397 as well as section 10.399. Then moving down, section 10.399. Eventually, here we go. So added in subsection 6, private flags, public flags, feathered flags, and banners. Feathered flags or banners should be located only on non-residentially zoned properties. They are allowed anywhere on a parcel, but should not be located within a public right-of-way, nor should be located in any fashion that would obstruct pedestrian access, vehicular access, safety, or visibility. Any flags or banners determined in violation would be subject to the notice violation process, and that's discussed further on. Flags of any type located on non-residential buildings should be located so that the minimum clearance distance is 9 feet from the bottom of the flag to the sidewalk or roadway. Flags of any type should not be installed flat or flush against any wall or against or on any roof of the structure. And then the next section gets into the size allowances and requirements. The following section behind that is the number that would be allowed. And then obviously they should not be illuminated. However, public flags can be uplit or downlit as long as the light doesn't create any sort of glare onto motorists or pedestrians. No electric, battery powered or motor powered device should be allowed for any advertising device. So that would rule out your wacky inflatable flailing arm tube men and other associated items. Let's see, they can have advertising message. We got rid of the part about the offensive content, but we did keep in that no political content should be allowed on any flag, because that's governed by the political sign regulations that are already in place in our ordinance. So they would not apply in this section. They are handled separately. We discussed materials. We discussed how they're going to be installed. They're time limited. The key takeaway there is that they're required to bring in feathered flags at the close of business each day. Enforceability is going to be difficult with that. They're going to have to self-regulate. I still have concerns about this. I think that they're just going to let them go until they die. And when they get a new one, they'll put a new one up in its place. So unintended consequences are certainly going to be present with some of these things as they're written. They cannot be permanent fixtures. They have to be taken down after 30 days. Again, we're not going to keep a clock on them. We don't have the staff to keep a clock on them. So businesses are going to have to self-regulate. Some will, some won't. I think we're going to find that this can create some problems. Maintenance and replacement, again, same thing. Some people are going to leave them out until they're completely deteriorated, sun worn, wind broken. Others will replace when their POP kits come in. So when Taco Bell gets their monthly POP kit, they're going to put out a new flag and theirs will probably stay in good condition. People that don't have the money or don't have the will to change them out will probably just leave them there until such time when Mother Nature takes care of them. So that's the bulk of what we've got. Just reiterating about being brought inside each day. So that's the bulk of the text amendments, and I welcome any comments or suggestions.
Just a observation about the flags that I see that are in the public right of way during the 4th of July. On the poles, down South Main Street, down through Court Square. Don't have a problem with it, but is this going to affect that?
Let's see.
Because it says no flag in the right of way.
I don't see how some of those flags don't get clipped. I said, I'm surprised some of those flags that are hanging out of the street don't get clipped by a truck as it go by. The 4th of July. Yeah.
Justin, can you clarify something for me? Under advertising message, E, section 2 is struck out. No offensive content.
We had that in there originally. The constitutional concerns came up at our last meeting. We spoke with the attorney, addressed those, and that's why it's struck out. It shows that it was in there, but it's now struck out as far as language
And
goes.
that's because of legalities.
We believe it violated the First Amendment.
Agreed.
So did we come up with is it the flags that are in the right of way for the 4th of July,
Yeah, where did I
American
have that?
flags, is that going to be okay?
I was trying to find that. Can you tell me again where that was? About the,
It's back at the start, no flags shall be in the right of way.
I remember saying it.
And the basics,
Yeah, on location.
and like,
So that only applies to feathered flags or banners. It does not apply to public flags.
so if somebody wants to hang their American flag off the top of the building, it's okay. and drape it down across the building, it's okay.
As long as it's not flat on top of the roof, yeah.
And I'm good with that. I see one sometimes at Court Square,
Mhm.
the huge
But
American
they have
flag.
like poles or things.
Yeah,
but Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
it
all fine.
looks really good and I don't want to prohibit any such or try to prohibit anything like that. I also had some concern, maybe it might be better to set a time limit. When I say time, that they have to be off the street at night. Because you got to take them in daily.
Like the American flags.
No, in feather flags.
Well, it says it closes business.
Everybody closes at a different time,
Well,
but
the
the
bar
idea
don't
is
cl- the
that
bars
if you're closed, what do you
close
need
at
a
1
feather
o'clock
flag
and-
for? Go ahead and bring it in, and then when you're closed at midnight, go ahead and bring it in. Now,
That 11 stays open all the time.
for cookout, you're gonna be closed for what, 6 hours, I guess, so you'll have your flag inside for 6 hours, put it right back out, but
So, well, I think it might be appropriate then.
Close the business.
Close the business, yeah.
I think that's good.
yeah,
Since there's so many varieties of businesses.
there really are. And just again, enforceability is gonna be impossible.
Can't believe you got rid of my Gumby flag that bounces back and forth. I really wanted to put that up.
That's
Yeah,
right.
And if you put
It's
one of
Wacky
those-
inflatable flailing arm tube man.
We'll have some enforcement.
and
Can't sell cars without them.
it was actually number 6, A1 under location
Yeah,
within the public right of way, but
That's
that was
right.
specifically feather flags.
flags
and
are-
banners.
yes, sir.
All right, I'm gonna open up the public hearing if there's no more discussion.
Got one comment
Okay.
real quick. Just a suggestion. I talked to Justin earlier today. If you look at the bottom of page 34 on the PDF, that last line, businesses are required to bring in feather flags at close of business each day. Keep that in mind. If you go down just a couple of pages, the verbiage changes to shall be removed and stored indoors before close of business each day. And then on the next page, it's the same. Shall be removed. I would say just, everybody here knows what bring in means, but just for consistency and clarity, I would suggest changing that first instance on page 34 to shall be removed. for
Basically,
indoors.
to match page 36 and keep it
Match the
consistent
two other-
throughout the text. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the public hearing at this time. Anyone in the audience that'd like to talk about the flag or ordinance? Mr. Boney?
Just a question, Mr. Chairman, the attention made was some limit on the number allowed. What is-
Let's see. Okay, so you're allowed 1 feathered flag or banner or 2 private flags per parcel. If there's more than 1 business or organization on a single parcel of land, the total number of feathered flags or banners or private flags should not exceed 2 per parcel. No more than 4 public flags are permitted on any individual parcel without city council's prior approval.
Sorry, what is a private flag?
Private flag, we define that as
Picture of my dog.
a fabric or other flexible material that is attached or designed to be attached to a pole or similar device which represents or symbolizes a business, organization, or group. To be distinguished from a public flag, which has the name, insignia, emblem, or logo of any official nation, state, or municipality that's recognized by the federal government.
And Mr. Chairman, just your question. And earlier, the future non-reasonable things that should be some explicit mention of American flag.
I have no problem with adding that. I think that would actually be a good,
I'm all for it.
that's something that
I'm
can
as
be added
American as
easily.
Anybody, so yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Boney. Mr. Hall, welcome.
Do I need to state my name? And
Please, if you would, I mean, we know you, but the recording might not.
my name is Ricky Hall. My address is 2501 Pepperstone Drive, Graham, North Carolina, 27253. I am the co-author of this ordinance here. This was brought just to help some of the businesses that were hurting from the COVID virus, trying to give them a way to advertise that they were open. And that's all this was for. It's not for anything else other than that. And, you know, whatever we can do to help our business downtown, I know we would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Hall?
No question. I believe that was just basically for clarity, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Question with respect to that number limitation that you went over. What are the examples that's used in an earlier discussion of this topic? Showed a location that had 3 or 4 feather flags. Second message
Mhm.
or a message of a brand of whatever it was. So I'm interpreting the description, so forth, that would not be allowed,
That is correct.
only one.
It says 1 feathered flag or banner or 2 private flags per parcel. So you get to pick one of those options.
So even if you call one of the business signs private flag, or feathered flag, that's fine. You'll do that.
Correct.
Mr. Snyder, strip center, each one of them has a different physical address.
It's not based on address, it's based on the parcel. It's per parcel.
Do we really want to limit that? Oh, if you go down to Food Line in Graham and there's 15 businesses down there.
The better question would be, do you want to allow 15 feathered flags? I think the
I
answer
don't
would
know
be
that
no.
I want to allow 15 feather flags because I don't think I really.
That's
do.
why we put the number limitation on there with multiple businesses. Now, if you want to change that, you can, but
What kind of, and maybe it's outside of our view. So there's 15 businesses and 7 of the 15 want to put a flag up. What are they going to do? Duke it out to see who gets to put it up?
I'd say the first people to get it out there are the ones that get to have it. But remember, it's only per 30-day period, so they're supposed to take them down so somebody else gets their turn.
Or the landlord.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly,
Again, I don't want the city getting involved with
No.
with
no, I don't want
this is
your
going to be
office to
so
get flooded.
difficult for the city to be able to keep up with. It's really going to have to be self-regulated.
Okay. Anyone else from the audience like to speak? All right, I'll close the public hearing now and we'll discussion amongst the board. What's your thoughts?
I have no additional comments. I'm tossing around the street frontage versus parcel idea in my mind, how much linear footage each parcel has along a street. But it just further complicates the process. So I think we would be well served to go with the language we have.
I'd like to reserve my time for the end, please, sir. Got a comment or two.
Mr. Benesh or Mr. Wooten, either one?
I really don't have any further comment. I think pretty well covered it. Just would like to add that I'm personally not all that in favor of feathered flags, but you know, takes a village.
Mr. Benesh.
I really have no further comments. I like the language as presented. Again, I feel like that is put too many restrictions and not enough enforcement. What good is a law if you can't enforce it? So I like the language as written.
Right, Mr. Chrisman, I'm gonna let you have your comment.
I have the same concerns about this text amendment as I did about the last one. The way it's presented, coming from the council instead of from a private individual. And I respect Mr. Hall's comment on trying to reestablish businesses that have been impacted by COVID. But several years ago, this board heard the same argument. And there were two parties that spoke in favor of feathered flags, and the most vociferous spokesperson said that their business was directly impacted without the ability to fly the flags that one of their suppliers had supplied. And it was a national company, and they were losing sales, and they insisted that they'd be impacted economically, not being able to fly the flags. And that business is owned by the current mayor. So once again, this whole subject and the timing of this text amendment, for all the reasons previously mentioned, is questioned. But my main concern, like Mr. Wooten, is aesthetics. A 12-foot feathered flag is 12 feet by 4 feet, get 48 feet of advertising material. And if you're coming in on the Main Street corridor at Bethany Church, from Bethany Church to the courthouse, you have the possibility of approximately 90 12-foot tall feather flags, or 180 flags on 20-foot poles. Or if you came in from Rogers Road, all the development down there, you look, it's only 74 flags, or 74 feather flags, or 148 advertising flags. And we're talking about a tackiness factor here that would rival south of the border. I mean, driving up Main Street with 90 or 180 flags on 20-foot poles is that's a scary thought. We have sign ordinances that allow new business to put up a monument sign no higher than 6 feet. We approved minutes, on the minutes we approved we did last week, that we couldn't have a sign for a major development or a housing project more than 36 square feet. And now we're looking at a feather flag that could have 48 square feet, which is, I mean, that's a huge piece of advertising material that's going to be flapping in the breeze. And the banner flags with that size and that height, they don't make sense to me. With the monument signs being in the ordinance. I spoke with a member of the council before the last meeting, and my concerns about the enforcement. And you'd have to have a full-time zoning enforcement officer just to keep track of the 30-day limits, the number of flags and flown, and hours of operation. And I was assured by the council member that we could depend on the common decency and of the people to self-regulate. That brings me to something I've mentioned several times before, and that's the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons is an economic or environmental problem that occurs when individuals neglect the well-being of society in the pursuit of personal gain. The tragedies can be severe and long-lasting that affect scores of hundreds of thousands of people. Think of an industrial hog farm operation that chooses not to put their waste in a containment pond, but just dumps it in the creek. It flows in the Hall River, it flows into Lake Jordan or Jordan Lake, and then it flows into the Cape Fear River and pollutes everything downstream. That's certainly a tragedy. There's also tragedy that commons in a much lesser scale. It's as simple as litter on the side of the road. Picture yourself on a family vacation with kids in the back, a fun-filled family vacation, if I may. With kids in the back, you stop at fast food place and you have a car full of aromatic fast food. After a while, it starts to sour. Kids are tired of it. In order to make your car smell better, you roll down the window and just chunk the whole bag of litter on the side of the road. There are laws and regulations to prevent that. but there's not a mile on the interstate you can go down that doesn't have a sign courtesy pickup. This highway is adopted by some organization that's trying to pick it up. The state spends billions of dollars trying to police the well-being of people. And then there's a $250 fine. So, but you still chunk it out. So it's no big deal. If we rely on the inherent goodness of people, not to litter, that's not going to work. There was a former member of this board when this came up before that called feather flags vertical litter. I prefer the term trash on a stick. And I know that whatever we say this text amendment is going to pass the council, no matter what we vote on or how we vote. But I'd be remiss in my duties as a member of this board that is dedicated to and determined to do what's best and correct for Graham. I was going to make a motion that we deny it, but it doesn't matter what we do here because they're going to approve it. So I would like to make some suggestions to make this ordinance less offensive, if that would be acceptable.
May I ask you a technical question? You described it as a 12-foot high potential flag.
Yes.
I thought I understood the description. I say 9.
12 feet. 12.
Yeah, it says feathered flags should be no greater than 12 feet in height, no greater than 4 feet in width. Same with private flags can be 15 square feet. Feathered banners should be no more than 12 feet in height, 2.5 feet in width. Public flags no larger than 50 square feet in area, no taller than 30 total feet in height when mounted to a flagpole.
From the bottom of the flag to the roadway or.
Oh,
sidewalk.
yeah, the clearance, sorry.
In my opinion, 48 square feet is just way too big. It says a 12-foot flag, but could you put a 12-foot flag on a 15-foot pole? There's no height limit other than the size of the flag. And since we have a sign ordinance that says the monument signs can't be higher than 12 feet, more than 36 square feet of signage, now you've got a sheet and a half of plyboard standing up in there with Joe's Eats on them or used tires or whatever you want to say on them. You look online and you could buy 7 foot, a total length of a 7-foot pole with a 5-foot flag on it. It's 18 or 2 feet wide, which will give you 9 square feet that are less expensive by far than a 12-foot or than a 12-foot flag. If I remember one of the examples at the service station, they must have been 15, 20-foot flags. The car dealership had more than that. And if we think we could regulate a car dealership to one flag, one banner flag, or one other flag, I think we're just whistling in the wind there. So I'd like to propose feather flags no greater than 7 feet tall, the total height of 7 feet, no greater than 2 feet wide. The private flags, you have 15 square feet on a pole no longer than 20 feet tall. The flag out front might be on a 20-foot pole. The height inside the gym, at the recreation center of most industrial buildings is 20 feet tall. That's a tall flagpole. I would say a flagpole doesn't need to be any taller than 12 feet with a 3x5 flag on it. On the public flag, still no larger than a 4x6 flag, which is 24 square feet on a 15-foot pole. As to the problem, the issue of what you're talking about with multiple businesses and a strip center, I can see a problem there, but I'd like to have the ordinance, the text amendment read that no more, one business can't have more than one flag out. So the first person can't put their 2 flags out there and say dibsies for the next month. It has to be in a multiple business location. There has to be at least 2 different flags flying of 6 foot tall or 7 feet tall, no more than 9 square feet. Those are my recommendations.
Excuse me, clarification. 7 feet by 2 feet. That's the flag.
The flag is 5 feet by, or 6 feet by 2 feet on a 7 foot pole. So the total height would be no more than 7 feet, which is only 1 foot of,
7 foot pole.
yeah, which is only 1 foot higher than the monument flags that we allow downtown.
All right. What was the 4 by 6?
The state flags, the American flag, the advertising flags that fly on the flagpole. A 4 by 6 flag is more than you fly on the side of your house. Usually those are 3 by 5s. I imagine the flags that are flying out front are 4 by 6. And I don't think that's a 20-foot pole. It might be a 20-foot pole. The ordinance is 20 feet. But if no, a 20-foot pole is a huge pole. You could put a 20-foot flagpole inside the recreation center, the gym,
So what is your height?
a 12-foot pole.
So everybody might follow the latest step. 12 feet for one kind of flag, 7 feet for the other.
7 feet for the feather flags, total height. The feather flags, teardrop flags, feather banners, they're called all sorts of different things. You could go online and put in a 5-foot flag and there's multiple, including Amazon, have it delivered tomorrow.
We are talking temporarily I've never been a big opponent of our sign ordinance that we have with the limitation of size. I know I was outvoted when we voted on that. I was on this board originally and I was outvoted, and I'll probably still be outvoted today because the limitation that we was wanting to place on citizens, business owners, the city itself come in and wanted to put a sign at Highway 54 and Cooper Road there where it comes out, and wanted to do 84 some square feet or something. And we wouldn't being a good steward as a city wanting to do something bigger than what we was gonna allow an everyday person to do who resides in Graham. So I haven't been a big opponent about signs and signage anyway. I'm not totally against it. We are talking temporary. This is not something that's going to be there forever, even though it could be there for 30 days and it goes in for a day and it pops back out for 30 more days. It becomes a point that where do you say, no, you can't advertise? Well, we already telling people where you can put your sign, how big your signs can be. You can't put it on the 3rd story, except the other day, the Alamance Community College was approved based on how their signage was over there. Where does it become a point that we're over-regulating people? And, we got to have some, I don't say common sense, we got to have some good decisions that we make as a board, and ultimately the council either adopts or don't adopt. I don't say that we make bad decisions. I say we make decisions that we don't all agree with sometimes. And that creates good conversation and good discussion, and maybe the council can draft something better out of it. Mr. Chrisman, but we're talking about something temporarily. I'm not opposed to a 20-foot pole. I'm not opposed to a 7-foot pole. I really don't have a great feeling either way of which way we ought to go, whether it would be smaller or larger. I'm not opposed to the square footage of the sign because we're talking about temporary. Maybe if anything that we talked about, I don't want to get stuck in putting it in certain districts allow it and certain zoning districts don't allow it. And of course, I don't want to see 180 flags from Bethany Church to the courthouse. But that potential is there. But where does it come to a point that we as a board, where we start thinking about that we're over-regulating?
And I think to your point, Dean, Chairman Ward, what you'll find is that if you start with the looser interpretation like it's written, you identify problems, then you come back and fix those problems with a subsequent text amendment to draw it back. Rather than starting with the strictest interpretation and then trying to loosen it up, because then people like Mr. Miracle suffer having to wait until that can be loosened up. So I think it's easier to tighten than it is to loosen.
And I do agree with what you're saying there, but back a few months ago, there was a local gun shop here in town on Hardin Street, right there near Bullard, who has a sign that is in the right of way that's been there probably for 40 years. And the city is not making anybody take it down, but they're telling a business owner he can't use it.
He should be able to replace the face.
Nope.
Oh, see, I have a different interpretation. I think I differ on that, but
And that's, you know,
to me, the
because
structure's there. It doesn't matter what it says on the structure because we don't regulate content. So whatever's there is there.
well, our ordinance prohibits you from having a sign in the right of way.
Whether that may be the case, if the sign is already there, you can use the sign as it is. Now, if it gets destroyed or damaged over 50%, then yeah, it needs to come out and you have to follow all the regulations, but I would disagree with that past
And
interpretation.
I'm glad to hear you take that stance with the signs like that, but even if you go back to the gas station across the street from McDonald's, they had some 20, 30, 40-foot
Mhm.
sign out there. And because that business was closed for 180 days, before a new business could open in there, that owner had to take that sign down because we had passed that monument sign.
Mm.
Now, we've got to develop, I keep going back to this, and I don't want to say common sense, but we got to use common sense. If that sign is already on that property, why should an individual have to take it down?
Yeah, honestly, if the desire of the city is to make them take it down, they need to put an amortization clause into the ordinance and then let it amortize over a certain period of time so that they've got 7 years to save up some money to be able to know that it's coming.
And that's a good idea there. That's working with. the
That's correct.
business.
You
That's
don't
working
want
with
to
the
spring it
community.
on them, but you want to say, okay, look, 7 years from now, this is amortizing. You're going to have to take it down. Plan now, whether they're in there now. Now, sometimes you run into problems where the businesses change out often and the last guy gets stuck with the bill. But you know, that happens.
Thank you. Mr. Wood.
Yeah, just to add a comment, I actually agree with a lot of what Mr. Crispin said, and especially about self-regulation, what you were saying earlier. But the fact of the matter is, one of the most prominent examples of self-regulation is you go out on the street and there's a speed limit sign out there. Wherever you go, that's essentially self-regulation. So I don't think that is the pivotal point in this. I think we need to look at it from a perspective, as Mr. Hall has said, what's the benefit to our businesses as opposed to the aesthetic, which is going to be the more important. Is there a balance?
And again, I think starting with that looser set of regulations and then tightening up as needed be. So if we find that businesses are not self-regulating, we can pull back a little bit. Or if we're finding that the aesthetic is more important, we didn't realize how important the aesthetic actually is, then we can say, oh, we need to reduce the number. Or we need to tweak the language to make sure that, you know, we don't have it look like Las Vegas Boulevard down there.
Yeah.
But at some point, you need to have a starting point.
There has to be a starting point. I think that's where we're trying to get to. And I think Mr. Chrisman's points were all very valid as well. It's just,
Well, my point then would be it's easier to let the genie out of the bottle than it is to put the genie back in the bottle.
you could
If-
wish
if-
the
if
genie
you've
back
in-
in.
If you've invested in 12-foot banner signs and have been flying them and it looks as tacky as Las Vegas Boulevard, then they say, oh, no, that's too big. We got to reduce these signs. Or you got to amortize the expense of that over a 7-year period. You
Well,
know,
these are temporary, so.
But temporary is. If they're called 30-day signs, but temporary, there's a flag down on Highway 54 Hardin Street, there at the box place. It's been there for, well, there are a few remnants on the pole that are still there, but it's been there for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. They're hiring now, but you couldn't tell it because it's just a couple of threads hanging off the pole. So temporary is, I think, in the eyes of the beholder, and certainly not, I mean, you say a 30-day flag, but, you know, self-regulated, speed limit's a suggestion. I mean, you look at Hardin Street, people aren't doing 20 miles an hour when they cross Melville.
All you have to do is get on the expressway and see how self-regulated it is.
Yeah. So I think starting off small, I mean, the city council is going to pass it anyway, but I think if we make them make the jump to 12 feet instead of 6 feet or 7 feet, that then we're not going to take the heat, because I think it's going to be terribly unattractive and terribly gaudy.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Mr. Chrisman to reread the specific heights and timeframes and allowances, just for my personal clarity? You had gone in and adjusted some of the heights, and I was checking them up with the commercially available, just so that we could check each other. With the reduction in size, it's actually something someone could purchase.
Yeah, if you could look on Flags R Us or Banners R Us or something, I was looking up today, and I had feather flags shall be no greater than 7 feet, which is a 5-foot flag. And 2 feet off the ground, no more than 7 feet in total height. And these flags are advertised at, some of them were 18 inches wide, some of them were 2 feet wide. But you put a square footage of 9 square feet. And the same with the feather banners, because feather flags, feather banners, teardrop flags, they're all pretty much classified as the same. Then private flags, a 3 by 5 foot private flag that says Ford or Chevy or whatever, on a 12-foot pole. But a 20-foot pole is way too high. These are temporary flags as well. And to put up a 20-foot pole, you're going to have a yard of concrete that this pole is going to sit in to hold it up. And plus a halyard to raise and lower the flag, if you're going to do that. And the public flags, American flags, stuff like that, the state flag or the city flag should be no larger than a 4 by 6 and on a 15-foot pole. If we had a 15-foot pole in the backyard, and a 3 by 5 flag was more than enough. And then on the businesses, on the strip malls with multiple businesses in the same location, no more than 1 feather flag per business. So Food Line couldn't go out there and slap up 2 flags and leave everybody else with no flags, or the Pizza Hut or the Domino's couldn't put 2 flags up, and the guy out there twirling the little banner. It'd have to be at least flags representing 2 different businesses or organizations, whether flags or private flags. And I think it would be easier to increase the size of the flags down the road. It would be to decrease the size of the flags down the road.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was encouraged by the 1 per business until I began to go through in my mind the size of some of these businesses would then lose.
They lose all visibility.
I have nothing further.
Any further discussion, Mr. Benesh or Mr. Wooten?
The only comment that I was going to make, if you were going to try to, again, regulate temporary signs for 30 days by size, And we don't know what that's going to be other than what's in the language there unless we make changes. Would be to, again, have some type of government regulation, which you're going to have to enforce. That's going to be tough to do. But make the businesses, again, that's putting handcuffs on them, to ask for a temporary flag or banner permit for a certain amount of time. So they have to come in and pay for that permit in order to have that flag out there. But again, to do that, a lot of cities do this. You got to enforce it, and without being physically able to enforce, it's going to be very difficult. I like the language as is. I don't see any reason to change it unless the city council wanted to actually look at possibly using a permit type forward, I guess is a better word to go forward. Again, you're going to have personnel to enforce it
And issue the permits.
and issue the permit.
Can I ask Mr. Miracle a question? You have an open flag out there in your parking lot, I've seen. Yeah, and that's what, 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall? I mean, it's not as tall as you. Okay,
I'd say by passing it, it looks like it's about 9 feet, 10 feet.
Any further? I'll make this motion then. I make a motion that we approve the text amendment for flags and banners as written, except for the
American.
American flag would be exempt in all aspects of the ordinance.
Mhm.
And it's consistent with our 2035 growth management plan.
I'll second that.
And to change that one little bit of verbiage.
Yeah, the verbiage, Mr. Wooden wanted to maintain consistency throughout the amendment for closed storing indoors.
Shall be indoor.
Yeah,
Flags.
if you would amend.
And shall be removed and brought in at the end close of business
Yeah,
Is that
just make
appropriate?
it consistent with it. too.
with consistent with the other page there,
Yes,
Justin.
yes, sir, I've got
Was
it.
that page 36 and 30?
36, it basically
36
make
and 37.
page
36 and
34
30.
consistent with page 36.
Okay. And would somebody like to second the rest of that? That I added on
I'll
amended?
second that.
Okay. Got a proper motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
based on the vision of the statement of the 2035 comprehensive plan, where Graham is envisioned to be a vibrant, excited, and distinct place that serves as a source of pride for all those who call this community their home. I don't think having 180 flags, 90 feather flags on the corridor on South Main Street is appropriate.
Mr. Chrisman, you hadn't seen 180 flags yet.
You hadn't either, but wait till you do.
And when we do, we can talk about it, but at the present, I mean, you're already thinking that there's something that potentially going to be bigger than it probably is. I don't think it's going to be as big as we think it is. I think back when feather flags were flying here and they wasn't regulated, there were sections of town that had multiples, but most of them were confined to one lot, having 7 flags on one lot. Outside of that, I didn't really see a big distinguish of 180, and I hope I don't see it now, but we'll see.
I hate to see it.
All right, Justin, we're gonna let Mr. Huffines recuse himself for number 8, item number A for new business.
And can we get a motion and a vote on that, please? I think just to keep in with Robert's Rules of Order.
Based on item number 8 under new business A, Mr. Huffines is representing Square Miller Holdings LLC. I do believe it will be a direct conflict of interest for him to represent this board at this time, and I would like to make a motion that we recuse Mr. Huffines.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Mr. Huffines, if you would, during your presentation, certainly address yourself as engineer and not as a board member. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a request by Mr. Huffline on behalf of Square Miler Holdings LLC to rezone approximately 0.65 acres at 206 East Elm Street and also 105 North Marshall Street from B1 and B2 to conditional residential and conditional business. And the purpose is to construct one live-work building as well as 3 townhome buildings. And the amount of first floor commercial in the mixed-use live-work building would be 2,000 square feet. Staff feels this zoning request would be in character with the downtown surrounding residential and business uses as a transitional infill use. Additionally, townhomes as a principal use would be akin to a duplex in intensity of use. Finally, the proposed commercial uses would not generate excessive traffic. The live-work units proposed would be an acceptable accessory use per the future land use plan. Uses proposed for the business portion of the mixed-use building reflect those that would be allowed in the conditional business portion of the permitted uses table, as well as that would also be permitted in the B2 general business district, the one exception being the adult-oriented uses. There is some on-site parking proposed that would serve the residential uses. However, the business uses, if marketed consumer traffic or heavy trucks for deliveries, would likely need to rely on the off-site city parking in the city-owned lot next door. And staff would like to make the comment that that city-owned lot should not be used for overnight parking of vehicles, as that is not what it's intended for. The plan as provided provides 24 on-site spaces for 26 total bedrooms and 13 residential units. The ordinance, if it was built at a straight residential density, would require 20 spaces for the residences at 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. So that would leave approximately 4 spaces dedicated to overnight guest parking. And we do feel that that is adequate. The site proposes private sanitation and recycling. The entire site would have gated access with a brick wall that would be, I have 6 to 8 feet. It's actually 4 to 6 feet per the site plan in height around the perimeter, provide a buffer against the residential uses to the north, as well as to the use to the east. And finally, buildings would be constructed of materials such as fiber cement, bricks, stone masonry accents with metal roofing that would blend with the downtown in character. Building heights range from 25 to 35 feet above grade. And so in the future land use plan, this is designated as downtown residential. Principal uses listed would be predominantly detached single-family homes. New neighborhoods may include duplexes, and that's where the townhomes become akin to a duplex in intensity. Supporting uses include neighborhood-oriented commercial, small professional offices, live-work units, and home occupations, provided that they do not generate excessive traffic and parking. Staff is recommending approval of the rezoning consistent with policies 4.3.1, 5.1.2, and 5.2.1.
thank you. Mr. Huffines, if you want to come forward, we'll open the public hearing. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chad Huffine. I'm the civil engineer for the project 505 East Davis Street in Burlington, North Carolina. I'd like to just add a couple of things to what Justin has very efficiently illustrated. The plan you have before you, there are several dimensional considerations we'd like to bring to your attention. And then as we go through these, I'd like to bring specific attention to a tree that's along Marshall Street. And we'd like to have a few of the conditions added to the plan or to the submittal, if you so choose. So if I could begin specifically with the overall narrative of the project and then talk about the specifics dimensionally, if that's okay.
be fine.
So building 1, we would have 4 units that front Marshall Street, 2-story units. Each one of those would have a parking space in close proximity to the building. The building would front Marshall Street and have pedestrian access to the existing sidewalk with parking areas to its east. The red building, building number 2, It's very similar in its construction to building one. It's slightly shallower. It's 36 feet shallow compared to 40 feet. So 4 feet less. The 5 units would be similar to the ones that front Marshall Street. The red building number 2 would front the City of Graham parking area with individual pedestrian access points, little wrought iron gates at each entrance. And the parking spaces for those buildings would be located to the rear or north. The yellow building to its east, building number 3, are 2 larger in respect to the other units, 2-story units with a single car garage and a parking space behind that. Those are 2-story as well. And then as you move down the project to the south, as you approach Elm Street, the 4,000 square foot live work building is initially intended to have a 2,000 square foot B2 type area with a live work capacity with the work above, work below and live above. Parking for that building would be a combination of the 4 spaces to its north and the use of parking at the City of Graham. Overall, we have 24 spaces proposed for a combination of the residential and commercial uses, and we feel that's a really efficient use of the property and a good rate of parking for the buildings. Specific dimensional items I would like to bring to your attention. The city landscape ordinance requires the wall to be 6 feet or the fence, opaque fence or wall. In the areas closest to the public right-of-way, there may be a reduction required in height of those walls for visibility, which would require that to be 4 feet as opposed to 6. I want to make that clarification. That may be something that is brought to our attention during the technical and review process. So it would not necessarily be a 6-foot wall all the way to the curb or right-of-way. It would reduce so that we would be able to see as motorists beyond the wall. The second item I'd like to bring to your attention is the large tree at the entrance off of Marshall Street, where we've worked for the past couple of months with the fire department, and we have not received a resolution in writing from the fire chief. He's had some family concerns over the past month. We've talked with the fire department captain, with fire inspector, and we've talked with the fire chief, but we do not have anything for you at this time. So the plan before you has a 20-foot wide entrance for the first few feet of that project. We have looked at the large tree and the planter area that we hope to leave around it. And it would benefit that tree in that area to reduce that 20 feet back to 16 feet, which would be compatible with the remaining portions of the project. But until we have that determination from the fire chief, we would like to continue forward with the driveway entrance at 20 feet with the option to reduce it to 16.
Justin, can you point out where that tree is on the map?
There is a figure I'd like to show you that enlarges that area. It's an enlargement. And then a photograph that'll help clarify a lot of this.
It's where I thought it was. I was just asking.
So if you pan down just a little bit. That's all.
That's
So-
as far as it'll go.
Okay, do you see the light green area adjacent to the asphalt? So that's the 4 feet in question. Currently, we are using the green as asphalt to provide a 20-foot wide entrance. If possible, we would like to have it be considered, if it moves forward, that aisle could be 16 feet. If the fire chief agrees that that's manageable to his group. And then the photograph shows you what we're specifically looking at. You have to zoom in real tight. There's a ruler on the ground that shows the corrugated metal fence post and the large tree. And it shows you a 12-foot dimension and a 16-foot dimension. 12 feet will accomplish the goal that we have of saving the tree, I believe. That's just my experience. the canopy of the tree extends out to about 16 feet from the property line. And it helps us just provide a little extra certainty to that situation. So that's what I'd like for you to consider if possible.
Just a quick question on the tree, Chad. So how are they going to avoid disturbing the critical root system when they're actually grading this site and doing the site work?
So the grades that enter off of Marshall Street and exit onto Elm Street will match the adjacent grades. There's about 3 feet of fall from Marshall Street to Elm Street, which will carry through the project. The pavement base in this area will be a sand type base course, which will allow the roots to have some flexibility as opposed to coarse aggregate base course stone. So as you move outward from the tree, it only improves the possibility. And, so often we are trying to get rid of trees. So often we're trying to save them. It's dependent on the situation. And this is one that we would like to keep. Either way will be fine. And certainly fire safety would take precedent in my mind over the viability of the root zone. But I think we could accomplish either way.
How thick would that pavement be there?
So the heavy duty pavement section will be 3 to 4 inches of asphalt. The first few feet would be a concrete. And then as we move into the neighborhood for the dumpster path, it would be 3 inches of asphalt over 8 inches of ABC stone. But in this critical area, the sand course base would be a little bit thicker than the 8 inches of stone you would typically see, probably 10 to 12 inches. So that finished grade matches the concrete sidewalk departure from Marshall Street. And the excavation into the topsoil just is minimal, probably 8 to 12 inches.
There's no real root system showing anywhere there, is
No, it's a big root crown, but they're in that driveway and we're gonna get them. And I just want to do everything I can to not kill it.
that 16 foot would help a lot.
It would help, but it certainly would be a secondary consideration to what the fire chief wants for that area. No, but I have. It's in good shape. Now I'm certainly open to any questions of other items. Those are just heavy on my mind.
Could you give us a description of live workspace?
Yes, sir. So if the bottom floor was occupied by a business, the upper floor would be occupied by a resident. They may or may not be the same person. Then the business would be uses that fall under the conditional business table of permitted uses unless some of those uses are removed during this process. The residents above would be confined to those areas and not live in the first floor area.
Okay, and Square Mile Holdings LLC is owned by,
The owners of this project is Chris Barrow and Chuck Talley. And Square Miler is the business entity that applied for the zoning request.
okay,
And we are the civil engineer representing that customer.
okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chad, is this a particular building that we're talking about, the live and workspace, 2-story only, strictly 2-story, or is it going to be more stories?
2-story. There are 2. There would be a 1,000 square foot and then another 1,000 square foot beside that.
And then 2 upstairs.
That is the 2 upstairs. Downstairs is a 2,000 square foot business area.
So,
One business.
so we are pretty sure that the upstairs is going to be a residential community or 2 units,
That
Yes,
is our zoning.
2,000 square.
That is for a residential request, not a commercial 2-story building.
And on that commercial first story, you said one business, but there would be always an option to make suites, correct?
There
Divide
certainly
it
could
however
be,
they want to
but
divide it.
in answering Mr. Boney's question, you would have one business entity.
Yeah,
If it's my engineering firm and your newspaper occupying that same 2,000 square feet, I do not have the foresight to tell that at this point.
just
That
2,000 square
2,000
feet.
square feet is one business.
Yeah.
Is your 2-story building will have an elevator in it?
I believe so. I believe that building 3 and building 4 will. But I'm not sure. The building plans have not been done yet, only the exterior elevations for the purpose of zoning.
So if you had an elevator and you have a shaft there, you're going to be talking about a potential third story just for the shaft itself, not the building itself, that protrudes out. Is that
That's fair, yes, sir. There'll be parapet walls around as we've proposed
right?
in elevation to hide that. But those parapets may be higher in order to accomplish whatever the elevator design needs.
That's what I just wanted to make sure that's
Yes, sir.
what I was understanding you saying.
If they're individual units, will there be an elevator in each unit?
In building 3, there's a potential for a shared elevator. In building 4, there would be a potential for a shared elevator. We would not, I don't think, I can't speak for the building designer, but I would not think we would put an elevator in both units and have them back to back. I think they would share. I can't really speak to that, Mr. Crispin.
Building 3 just has 2 units upstairs and 2 units downstairs.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Building 3 just has 2 units up and 2 units down.
Building 3 is a 2-unit building. It is a 2-story
Okay.
building
Okay,
and has 2 dwelling units.
okay.
So building 4, if we could go to the probably plan number 2. I'll have to look to make sure I tell you correctly. Some I have on the ground, some I have on the roof, and I want to make sure I tell you correctly. So the third plan sheet, the bottom of that, let's go to that building 4. So those would be on the roof.
Mr. Huffines, are they hidden in any way?
I'm sorry.
Those HVAC units hidden?
Yes, sir. The parapet walls would be around all 3 sides with a shed roof from the frontage to the rear of the building.
Okay.
And again, these are a very conceptual but realistic idea. The parapet wall may increase in height, given a certain unit. At an architect's level of expertise, he would know that where I would not. But we show a good bit of coverage, 4 to 5 feet of parapet wall, which should be sufficient.
One other thing, when you mentioned shared elevator, if you had a separate business from a separate resident, not same people, that elevator going to open up into the business as well downstairs, or is it going to be an external type deal?
I don't know, imagine it would be built into a vestibule area in the rear with 2 doors.
That's a little concerning to me. I haven't seen that before.
I agree.
The exterior of the units that are facing, I guess Hardin, or it's not Hardin, Marshall, is that a brick material and a vinyl mix, or is it all masonry?
So we're asking in our language for masonry and hardy.
Hardy.
I think Justin has probably better described it as fibrous cement. No vinyl is proposed, but these are all masonry type materials: wood, metal, brick, stone, fiber cement siding, that sort of thing.
And do these units have to be sprinkled?
There are no compartments large enough for a sprinkling requirement voluntarily in building 4, possibly depending on the use, but they are not required to be sprinkled.
If I may speak for the board, I would like to rule out options B and C right off the bat.
What's your thought process?
They're ugly. They don't fit with the tenor of downtown. Option A is certainly more in line with what's downtown.
Yeah, I asked a question.
Just a minute. Just a minute, just a minute. Thank you. I'll let you come up and talk as soon as Mr. Huffines finishes.
Yes, sir. The idea would be the idea would either be a concrete masonry unit with a brick veneer or brick entirely. At this point, those are the two. We have tossed the idea around a stucco covered or a epoxy covered, but we have continued to land on the brick or the concrete masonry unit with brick veneer. It's in character and keeping with the wall that's common between this property and Dr. Crispin's property. And it goes with the rest of the area. So I think that's where we are. It is more expensive. But it's just not necessarily appropriate.
Mr. Hovline, one quick question that I'm not sure got answered during the TRC review. That live work building, it says 0-foot setback to Elm Street. Are people going to have to pull out into the sidewalk to be able to see around that building to be able to see oncoming traffic when making a turn?
So the building is going to be 0.25 feet at 0.25 feet from the right of way. So the car will typically have the driver at the stop bar, which would occur at the sidewalk. So the car may be on the sidewalk when it's leaving. Just as you would in any normal driveway.
0.25 feet, it's like
Yeah.
inches.
3 inches.
Yeah, I just want to make sure they're not going to stop in the sidewalk because there's nowhere for anybody to go to get around it if that happens.
That's right.
Because you can't walk into the building and you can't walk into the street. So
That's a good point. So we have, that looks to me like 8 to 9 feet from the curb line to the right of way. And with the sidewalk, we'd have about 4 feet to play with in the shoulder.
What is that setback for the building from that right away?
3 inches.
3 feet?
3 inches.
3 inches. Oh.
Yes, it's commensurate with the B1.
Now, I understand
that's the
Justice.
problem.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that pedestrians are safe when coming.
Do we?
Also that they can see around the buildings, be able to see an oncoming pedestrian on a bike or something coming across. They don't run them over when they're pulling out.
Do we have a way to look at the street view of Elm Street and we can?
Yeah, let's
There's a verge there
All
with,
that.
with,
Google Earth, yeah,
yeah, there's a verge there with crepe myrtles in it.
Yeah.
planner,
Mine's still there,
for that building there.
burned.
don't like edge.
Build them in the back.
Keyboard. All right, what was the address on Elm? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't, but I can tell you. 206 East Elm.
Yeah. They just crossed Elm Street. All right. Okay. Oh, that's why. Number locks, no, hang on. There it is. Giant school bus, right?
Didn't want us to see it.
Huge. How much did you, no, I can't see it.
There you go, you can see it now.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I can try to see around the school bus. Maybe I can go the other way.
There's a good sized verge, and that sign is, the sign base is still there. And the brick wall is on the property line.
Yes, the brick wall is on us, actually. It's on the project side. Maybe, can you move a little bit? Because that's going to be just like the city parking lot. A car will typically pull to the edge of the curb line and occupy the sidewalk for a small amount of time. So a little bit of courtesy is going to be necessary when looking to your left.
Some sort of signage. I
We
think.
may need to add a mirror and some
Yeah.
signage there to be in keeping with the zoning and provide additional safety measures for someone who's walking to the
Are those-
east. Yes, sir.
Convex mirror.
Yes, sir. We use those at Warren Drug and Mebane successfully on a very, very similar situation, with drive-through traffic and an employee exit. And they've been very, very helpful.
My other
especially
thought, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, my other thought was to knock that down to a 4-foot sidewalk and move it up a foot to try to get a little bit more visibility there.
If I'm not mistaken, that the city's 5-foot minimum sidewalk width, we would need to ask for that as a condition then to reduce to the 4-foot width.
Does that apply to interior sidewalks too?
No,
That's right
street.
of way sidewalk, so I don't think we have that concern.
Sure.
I think it was just street.
That's what I thought was street sidewalk.
The interior sidewalks
3-foot.
are actually not required by,
They have to connect from the exterior sidewalk to the parking area,
to the parking area. That's correct. Just to the parking.
which this one kind of does. Can't really see it because the building.
Well, the
overhangs it, but
the
it's-
accessibility purpose you're trying to see is from city parking into the 5-foot sidewalks that run between the buildings, not the ones that run in front of the long dimensions.
Right.
So the right of way sidewalk, if I'm not mistaken, would have to be 5 feet, but we could certainly ask for a condition to reduce it to 4 or add the condition to put the signage and mirrors, which I would say we could integrate that pretty easily.
Yeah, I think one or the other is fine. And then signage, probably exiting just to watch it for pedestrians in the sidewalk or crosswalk there.
That it, Mr. Tuffins?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Tuffins?
The only question I had, if, Justin, if you lower that map a little bit toward the corner of the, no, the, yeah, right there. That turn, how wide is that in that area? If you, say for instance, if a fire truck had to make that turn right through there?
Okay, so on sheet number 2, I think we show an explanation for that. In the bottom left-hand corner of that sheet, we looked specifically at the turning maneuvers that the largest fire engine, and just bear with me for a minute, that Mebane had at the time we were doing the study, and for the contract waste hauler. And all of those vehicles can make that turn.
With that parking, would say if there's a car in that one spot, still make that turn?
Correct.
Okay.
We do not propose to bring the largest city of Graham fire truck in that area. After multiple conversations, it's not how they would fight the fire. Other engines and safety vehicles could enter that area and could maneuver the corner, as well as the garbage hauler. So it's pretty big,
Okay.
but it's tight.
It just looked
It is.
tight.
It is.
Mr. Boney? You have a question, Mr. Boney?
My question, the picture that's there of the building, that's not very far.
That burned.
Used to be a trolley car sitting there, and now it's gone as well. There's a concrete slab still there.
Thank you, Mr. Tuffins.
Thank you.
Did I hear you say, private trash pickup or contracted trash pickup?
Yes, sir. There's would be no public garbage on the off right of way. So this would all be private hauler, paid for by the individual residents there. Yes, sir. So it's a combination of push button, combination of code and Knox box, so that it is accessible to emergency vehicles, it's accessible to the residents only, and they are one way. The traffic is one way.
Coming off Marshall or coming off Hardin? Excuse me.
Wouldn't necessarily have.
You would have room for storage of one vehicle before it reaches the gate off right of way. If a second car was right behind that car, it would be in Marshall before it made its turning maneuver. So there's room for one, like you would at your cow fence to pull your tractor in. You'd have room to get off the road.
Okay, the main entrance is going to be on Marshall and the main exit is going to be on Hardin.
Elm.
Elm, I'm
Elm.
sorry, yes.
Correct. Exit onto Elm.
Okay, on the parking lot side on building 2, that's the front of the building faces the parking lot.
Correct.
There's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 privacy gates that get into the 4 right there. And then 2 down there to get in to the fence, to the property.
What we wanted to do was provide pedestrian access and an open path to lay fire hose. So we have your typical swing gate, swinging into the property for pedestrian access.
Okay, how will residents be discouraged from using parking lot 6 feet from their front door versus going through the gated entry on the back?
We had hoped to provide adequate parking internally so that they would bring their groceries in their back door. But if they had a visitor, they'd certainly be able to use the parking in front during the daylight hours. But there's no overnight parking in that parking area for these uses.
Mr.
I think that was a condition. There would be no overnight parking.
Yeah, and I think your property owner covenants could also make mention of that as well.
Question, Chairman, I didn't think city lots generic.
There's not, we're trying to discourage it. It's not the design of a city of Graham parking lot to allow overnight resident parking. It's more designed for transient traffic during the daytime for business use, for items like that.
Okay.
We're not restricting by condition. We're mentioning that it would not be the preference of staff to have overnight guest parking in that public parking lot.
All right, but it's not a condition.
I have not
Not a
conditioned
condition.
it.
Mr. Huffine, one question you just brought up, because when you said entrance off of Marshall and exit onto Elm, had you looked at the opposite direction possibly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just curious, because I know the traffic is kind of crazy sometimes on Elm.
Yes, sir. These are for sale. These are for sale.
What kind of price point are you talking? Do you know?
I don't, and I'd be scared to say. Every meeting I've been to today, I've sat across from a general contractor in front of a neighbor or an owner. And the general contractor will not, no matter how forthcoming we are with our engineering fees, will not say, we cannot price this within 2 weeks of production of a roof truss. I don't know. But we've heard prices from 150 a square foot to 260 a square foot. I do not know.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Huffines. Ma'am, please state your name and address for the record.
I'd be scared to death now.
Oh,
No need to be scared.
My name is Diane Faust, and I live at 211 East Hardin Street, Graham. If you go back to the brick structure that's on there at the house where you're showing the tree, if you can go back to that.
Right here, ma'am?
It's the
No, the-
house that they're going to be tearing down where the
The-
tree
the-
was, there was
the
trying to
Oh,
save it.
the picture, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, when you go through that driveway right there, those buildings right behind it is my home and my garage and 2 outbuildings. Since they've been working, I have torn down one of the buildings. I lost my husband 3 days before Christmas, so I'm there alone, so I don't have a lot of instruction from him, but it's going to be right back to me. And I guess my question to Mr. Huffland, they're talking about, and also Chucky had spoke to me as a friend, and he is saying that he will have a nice brick wall all around this. So, and speaking to that, if you go back to that back there where my building is, and then I have a garage, is this wall going to be against the back of that to cover me so that I'm not in the broad open with all these people living there? Because I live there alone and I'm out in the back and I'm mowing and things like that. And I would want something higher than a 4-foot thing. And of course, for 50 years being married and never being single, with the meanness around, I still get frightened sometimes at night. Because that area's highly with drugs on down there. But my question is, I guess, is when they do and tear that down and they do the wall, is it going to be all around my starting? I have a chain link fence, and will it be against my chain link fence? And they would, as far as I'm concerned, well, no, I couldn't take it down because it connects. I started to say they could take the chain link and put the brick, but it would have to go up against my chain link fence because it comes right to the very back of my property.
Mr. Alphonse, would you like to address that?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to speak with you and sympathize with you. Typically, as I am, is new to me tonight as well. Justin, if you'll go back to sheet 2 of our plan set.
And also, did you buy the house next to it that the nephew lives in? Do you have 2 of the house? Do you have, no, you just have 1. Okay.
So let's go to sheet 1 first. Just a little
Yeah, don't tell me a lot.
bit. Sheet 1 would be the existing conditions, so maybe sheet 3 in your. Zoom in on that northern property line. So the hard line on the very top of the property where Justin's moving that area,
All right, across where he's got, okay,
that's the property line that's shared with your property.
right
and his
across,
property.
right next to me.
The wall would be to the south of that line, 0.2 of a foot, so about 2.5 inches.
Right.
To that side.
Right.
And it would be I'm 5'11 and a half, so it'd
Right.
be this high or higher
Higher.
until it gets, let's go all the way to the left. Until the wall gets near the right of way where,
Is that where the drugstore South Court is? Or are you going to the opposite direction?
that's the nephew's house.
Sir, the
That's
nephew's
where his
house,
arrow is the large tree and the nephew's
so it's
house.
gonna stay 4 foot there?
For a little while.
Okay.
Then it picks up to 6 feet. And if it needs to be higher to give you some type of peace,
It would, because
it would be very helpful
I'm very
to know.
open to him right there. Because when I walk back behind, or I mow back behind my garages there, I have an opening that I can drive through with a car. So all that's open. If it was 4 foot, somebody could just stand me there talking to me because I'm 5'7 and a half. So,
Can you-
I mean,
Can you go back to where your property line begins?
see, I'm right next to the nephew. And matter of fact,
That's your parcel there.
okay,
So as it goes around that corner, just keep in mind that corner, and let's go to sheet 2. And we'll go to that same location. If you'll notice, that corner is the dumpster enclosure
on the right hand,
on the right, in that corner adjacent to your corner.
out of my corner.
So that by necessity will be 6 inches higher than the dumpster can. So it may be 8 feet tall there.
Okay, but you're gonna have the dumpster right up my property ending.
It's in that enclosure.
That's nice. I already got 9 goats and 12 chickens next door and 5 dogs and 2 cats.
They will eat well.
And when it's 85, it's unbearable. It's your day. And I've got to talk to him or somebody to get him out there to get rid of them. I wish you buy it, burn it down.
These are both my pay grades.
I mean, and the other day at 23, they're in the house eating straw out of the living room floor. And they're my neighbors. And then I got 6 feral cats that somebody's going to come get, or I'm going to antifreeze them. So y'all heard that. Policeman told me today, kill them. But now you're gonna put the dumpsters on me, baby. You know? Oh, Jesus. Now, I did offer, well, you're still gonna have the dumpster down there. I did offer Chucky to go straight through my back line. And if he give me enough to allow him to have that land to go straight back behind me, because a little bit of it I don't need of my back property, and offered it to him for parking. But you'd have to do one car, you know, in and out. I don't think it would hold two. But I did offer that to him. He hasn't got back to me. He said him and his partner would come back. But I have offered that. So if you do that, you can put the dumpster down on the other end.
I would comment to you, we better consider the plan we have. You and I can talk outside of the chambers.
There you go.
Address any
Okay.
neighborly consideration we might be able to help you with. Because I can't comment.
Oh, I know. All right. Also, are all these places completely together? Are they combined? I mean, are they? I don't read.
Separate buildings. They're 4 separate buildings.
Oh, they're 4 separated on that lot.
Yes, ma'am. So the,
So,
whichever way you want to look. That-
yeah, I think showing
That's
the
one set,
elevations. This
huh?
would be one set. Yes, ma'am.
That's one set. And then you have another one.
And then we've got another set here.
They'll be just like the top.
These are possible considerations for what the exterior elevation would be. Not that they
And
would
these will be the
different
condos for people to live in, correct?
townhomes, yes. ma'am.
Townhome, okay.
And then
And
those individual buildings are separated by yards and sidewalks.
And then there's,
So the ones like the business would be on the bottom, and you got one,
that's
that
this
building.
one,
this building.
this brick one here.
And that building is going to be separate.
That's a separate building too.
Are the condos going to be on the front, or is this building like?
So that building has a storefront and the lower compartment is a business. Then on the second floor, that's where the residential buildings.
Okay, so actually the condominiums are going to be backed up to the brick fence itself for the parking behind it. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand you.
No.
Okay, the condos that you just had the picture yellow on there,
They would front Marshall and front the city parking area.
Yeah,
that one right there.
they're gonna be closer to Marshall Street and to Elm
Marshall
Street than
Street.
to you.
Yes,
They'll be
Okay.
further from you.
And the
They'll have-
city parking, municipal.
They'll be
parking,
closer to
turn
that.
way.
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
Okay.
Business spaces.
Elm Street.
Elm Street.
Correct.
So that elevation view on the left, top left.
That will
corner
be facing Elm
is what
Street.
faces Elm Street and the insurance.
In
And
that little narrow one.
that's it. It's 60 feet wide. That building's 40 feet with 20-foot access, 16 with a shoulder and a wall.
Is that right next to the fence of your city municipal parking?
Yes, ma'am.
But it's room enough to
So
not take the fence down from there and be able to go through? That, if you
so
got
we'd have
that
to look
front,
at sheet 1 to see if the
Okay.
city fence encroaches on this property or if this property is clear of that. And I think it might be sheet 3 in your.
Oh, yep, yep. Sorry.
So to answer your question, the fence is probably on city property and the
Right.
fence would remain or be adjacent to the iron fence or whatever agreement the city has with this property owner may be replaced. But the idea is that there is a space between the city parking area and the fronts of those buildings. And then to the right-hand side where the larger brick building would go, that building wall is common with the line that the city parking lot is.
just in the picture that shows back to my back property, what is actually sitting right really at my fence back there? Is it the parking where they park?
So backing up to you,
Yeah, back of those white buildings back there.
yeah, that is going to be. Go back to the sheet here.
I'm sorry to be so stupid.
No,
but
you have every right to ask all these questions.
My dad was a contractor for 60 years, but you wouldn't know it.
Okay,
The dumpster
so,
pad.
so you're back here and then coming in, so I'll kind of walk you
Okay,
through. if you
I'm
follow
back
my
across
cursor.
where the green things are back there.
you're back in this corner here where my
Okay, I got
cursor
you.
is.
I got
So
you.
this is Marshall Street right here where this cursor is. Somebody will pull in here, come through this gate
Under the big tree.
under the big tree, which is up here. And we're gonna keep driving, keep driving. There'll be parking spaces to the right when you come in, parking spaces to the left when you come in. These
Are
are
you
parallel.
using your arrow? Am I missing it?
I am, sorry, I'm not moving it enough to be able to see it.
I didn't see it.
I apologize for that. So, but just imagine you're walking from left to right, okay? So you're coming in
Okay.
and you're just kind of following right along here. These are parking spaces. And then in the corner here, this is the dumpster area.
Okay,
Up in this corner is where your property is.
yes, sir.
So your catty corner right here. And then somebody will come turn that corner, and then down here, you have some townhomes here. And then you've got a little green area, some more parking. And then right before you come out, there's a live work building. This is the commercial on the bottom floor and the 2 units on the top floor.
Okay,
And then you come out onto East Elm Street and you
Okay.
go left or right. Does that help you out a little bit?
yeah, so basically the parking's back there.
You've got parking backing up to you, not
Correct.
buildings.
Yeah, no buildings.
So there's a little buffer from those.
But again, the brick thing will be back there.
The brick wall does
Be
abut
high
your
enough.
property, yes.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Let me zoom out.
The 4 buildings. I don't see, I'm not counting enough. The yellow building is how many units?
4.
All residential. The red building is
5,
5.
yep, and then
all
2,
residential.
correct, and then 2 in building 3, all residential.
Oh, wait, that's the building right there?
This is, yes, sir.
You can have color. That's why I couldn't find it.
Yep, and then the 2 live works, so 13 total.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing I'd just like to get on the record. I do not assert it to be a problem, but I think I would like to allow Mr. Christman to make a comment if he wishes with respect to the proximity of this project to the ownership on what I think I heard to be the right-hand side. I heard a phrase mentioned that the lot next door was owned by Dr. Christman, did I understand?
At one time it was, or still is.
That was me, and I think it's now Cone Health. I think Dr. Christmas retired because I can't see him anymore. I usually find out.
Yeah, he,
Property is no longer owned by.
I don't know that for a fact. I
It's-
just-
it's-
I went to the doctor's office, it was Cone Health.
it's leased to Cone Health. The office is, and Mark still owns, brother Mark owns the South Court, and that the building, yeah. Yeah.
I do not have an opinion, but I do not assert that it's any sort of problem. But because we dealt with this issue on
Address,
whether there would be any conflict, real or apparent.
no, I have nothing to do with brother Mark's business. I don't, there are things that a doctor does to you that I don't want my brother to do to me. And I haven't seen Mark professionally in 50 years. So, I mean, I traded South Court, but that's the extent of my interaction with that business.
Thank you.
My family doesn't go there. So there's things that that a doctor does to my wife that I don't want my brother doing to my wife. So, I don't have any conflict.
No, sir.
And the wall, Mr. Huffines mentioned, was built by, was it Simpson Insurance? Was
Haywood Simpson.
Haywood Simpson built that wall. And that's been there. It's only a 2-foot wall, and it's crumbling and it's in bad shape.
Yes, it is. It's all falling down in my yard.
Yeah. And there are chickens, and somewhere in the neighborhood's a rooster.
So yeah.
Any further?
There's the other problem.
Anyone else from the audience want to speak? Mr. Hugo, you're the last one sitting out there.
Hugo Kreischer, 2005 Cherry Lane. How many total units is it again on the residential side, Chad? 13. And all of that's residential, and then on that building number 3 is gonna,
Building
Four.
up here.
4 is the commercial with residential on top, correct?
Yes, sir.
It'll be 2 units residential on the top,
Correct.
average square footage,
1,000.
1,000. And then the red building, that's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units at 1,000. 1,200. And then the same for the puke green building on the left. Yeah, your construction cost is gonna be hard right now with this economy. No, I think it's beautiful. I'm interested in it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing as how
Okay, go ahead.
I see no more people wanting to speak in the public, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Christmas?
May I ask one more question without getting out like I was wanting to miss? Will there be security in his building in case something happens around the back or people start throwing things over, or will he be secured with some security for us?
Mr. Huffines, if you can answer that.
I can speak to the homeowners association will be required for this project, so there will be accountability for that. The wall will prohibit a lot of things, and you're certainly welcome to call anytime there's a problem.
They'd have to have a pretty good arm to get over the cars that'll be horizontally parked by that fence, and there'll be some self-regulation in there. Start throwing beer cans at my car.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
got one other question for Chad.
Let me open the public
Okay,
comments back up.
Does this proposal allow from some flexibility in case you find that you're not going to need all 13? If you want to make larger units or wiggle those around some way?
So my understanding of the conditional zoning process would be this plan ties this development to the zoning. And if there was a variation from this at a significant amount that staff felt was worthy, we would come right back to you
Have to
for
come back.
reconsideration. So if, for instance, the 40-foot building went to 39 feet and that was not considered a material change, then there would probably be no rezoning or reappearance of public hearing. But if anything significant changed beyond that or grew in any way, then it would be heard again at the public hearing level, beginning at staff, then the planning board, and then city council, if it made it that far.
Just wanted to get that on record.
Yes, sir.
That was all.
All right, I'll close the public hearing again. Mr. Christmas?
Is this considered in any of the historic zone? Does it have to, the building style have to be consistent with what's downtown, or it could be anything?
It's open.
Okay.
Mr. Boney?
Well, to an earlier comment, which I thought would become evident, but that Ms. Krista mentioned not liking the option
B and C.
B and C, but I haven't seen what.
Yeah, I don't have them labeled either. If I show them, which one's this one?
That's B.
Okay. And is this option C?
That's C.
You don't like either one?
And what's that? What's option A?
The good looking one. Now, the one we've seen most of was a square facade.
He likes the second one better than the first.
I like the first better than
Oh,
the other two.
I'm sorry, I got that wrong.
That,
No, that's B, that's C.
That's-
No, that's B, I'm sorry.
The brick building is B. I thought you said this one was B.
That's B. A is the one with the little balconies on it, the two-tone. It was at the very beginning on our pages. Yeah,
Page 45.
page 45.
that one.
That one.
Oh, down here. Gotcha.
I don't know if there's,
That's the one you prefer.
that looks more like a downtown building than the other two do.
And I'm sorry, sorry, is the current proposal that there's a mix of these, like one building is A, and one building is B, and one building is C, or are all of these?
Three options, or one of the four options that's been presented tonight, because it's tied to the property. If we approve, he's presenting all of these to us.
So that the builder could ultimately decide.
Do one of the four,
Unless.
unless Mr. Crispin or there's a restriction placed upon it.
Condition.
Anybody have any questions for Justin?
Yeah, I have one more on building 4 on that page, just go up the top of the page there, the 4 bay windows.
Right there.
That's the side of the building facing the parking lot. And the front elevation is right above it.
This faces the parking lot here, this side elevation. This faces Elm Street.
That's the back.
That's the front.
That's the
one,
front.
actually. That's the front.
Yeah, but the one on the right is. the
Front
back.
faces Elm Street.
In the rear.
This faces north towards the adjacent properties to the north, towards the trash area. This side here faces the parking lot.
Okay,
This side faces towards Dr. Crispin's old property,
okay.
former property.
Are those windows or?
That's
what
we would propose them as windows.
That's a lot of southern sun.
It could be correct, could be less than that.
Okay,
Certainly, that's our hope.
but I think that design is more in tune with the downtown look than the other two plans. Other two artist renditions.
Any further discussion?
I had no question.
Any further discussion, Mr. Crispin?
Other than the possible setback of building 4 from the lot line on the sidewalk. Granted, you'll have to pull out to cross the parking lot, but you don't want to sit in the parking, don't want to sit in the sidewalk while you're looking for traffic.
Yeah, so I think Chad's solution was a mirror and signage, I think was the
Okay.
solution. I think that would solve. the problem.
And
Or at
why we
least-
dropped 4 feet there? Or you want to remain at 6 feet, 5 feet? Okay.
All right.
The stipulation of a homeowners association stays with the property in perpetuity.
It's defined in the covenants. Typically, it's 10 years with each 10-year automatic renewal period
Okay.
after that, unless the majority votes to dissolve the union.
Okay.
Hello.
I cut that off twice.
That's your long
They're
clock.
saying it's time.
Well, that was my wake-up call.
You cut it off twice, but successfully, not a single time.
I turned it back on, my mistake, sir.
There's no further discussion. I will entertain a motion at this time.
Get the appropriate.
Is there any stipulations based on the mirrors and signage or the building facade? Are you going to want to do that, Mr. Crispin? As a condition?
Yeah, I would, when we get to the motion page, yeah, certainly have as a condition, safety measures with a convex mirror and signage to warn pedestrians, and the drivers.
Would you like to make that motion, sir?
He's getting the verbiage right.
I'm getting the verbiage right now.
Okay.
May I ask just one more question? I hope it doesn't, and, you know, it's
Ma'am,
not gonna really bother me.
not right now.
I can't talk.
Not right now. We're fixing to make a motion. The public comment is closed. You can welcome to come to city council, get your last words in with the city council. They got the final decision. That's okay. They had the final decision.
I think it's 2.1.1 diverse neighborhoods.
Mhm.
And
In the staff report, I've got 4.3.1, 5.1.2, and 5.2.1.
could you go over those again, please?
4.3.1, land use patterns.
Okay,
5.1.2, variety of ownership opportunities. And 5.2.1, diverse neighborhoods.
okay, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the staff report based on Grand Comprehensive Plan 4.3.1, land use patterns, 5.1.2, variety of neighborhoods, and 5.2.1, with the following stipulations: that there be signage and mirrors on the Elm Street exit, that we use the architect's rendition to be more compatible with downtown buildings as presented in or close to option A, and have signage on the city parking lot, whether they use the existing chain link fence or the fence that is incorporated, the iron fence that encourages no overnight parking. I'd like to make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Motion dies. I entertain another motion.
Mr. Chair, I can make that motion with the exception of the comment about the architectural plans, with everything else the same.
Would you consider the signage, withdrawing the signage of the city side? I don't want so many signs around it. If the city wants to put a sign up in the parking lot that don't allow parking, because at the
Yes, I'm amenable
present,
to that.
anybody can utilize that parking lot.
And I think it can be handled in their homeowners association covenants.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, I have a motion, and do I hear a second?
His motion.
Yes, Mr. Williams' motion.
All right, I say.
Thank you. I have a proper motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye, for the reason that I'd like to have the buildings be at least in some semblance of resembling a downtown building.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin. Okay. I guess we'll go to item number.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Huffines, you can join us back up here now. You are a member of this board.
Takes some getting used to.
And we're going to go to item number 9, public comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the board about any non-agenda item tonight? Come on up.
I got a new name. Hugo Kreischer, 2005 Cherry Lane. There is a overlay that was submitted by Mr. Huffine in regards to Cherry Lane. And I'm just curious of what's the process and what that looks like going forward as developers try to come into that area and purchase land and do what they want to do.
Justin, if you would you answer that?
Yes, Mr. Crusher. So the city council took that up and decided to defer it to coincide with a future land use map update and a unified development ordinance update, which we do anticipate are going to be funded in this next year's budget. So there was no immediate resolution for an overlay because of all of the moving parts involved and all of the stakeholders that have to be notified. But at this point,
When is the budget part that you're talking about
July 1st will be when the budget would be ratified.
of this year?
Yes, sir. And, but your protection at this point is the fact that those properties that are not currently zoned industrial will still have to come through the public process, just like they did last time.
Correct.
And you will still have the opportunity to oppose or to make recommendations
Understood.
to this board as well as city council as far as what you and concerned citizens of Cherry Lane would like to see to protect those properties out there.
I get
I
it.
will say that there is an I-1 zone piece of property, as we
Yeah, the 40
discussed.
acres that Intercept closed on.
They have closed on it.
Yep.
So that one can develop as an I-1 as intensive as it wants to. And
Completely understand.
same thing with the Purdue and Ickinger properties across the street.
That's
from
the
here.
9 acres.
And that's a lot of property. So aside from those, the
Oh,
only
you're
other
talking about the ones
I-1
across the street. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And the only other one that's zoned I-1 out there is Carl Westman's property by the interstate. But it currently does not have utilities, although
Correct.
Purdue and Eichinger's development of that property could potentially open that up for
You're
development.
talking about the Westman property that's on the side, that same side as the Ickinger properties that is
It's
already zoned.
opposite side of the street right at Cherry Lane and the interstate.
Yeah,
It's on the
adjacent to the highway.
southwest side of the
Where
interstate.
the
Yes, sir.
pond is. Okay.
So just to throw those out there.
No, I get it. I understand all that. So then the second part of the question will be is come July, you know, I understand budgeting and I get all that part, but I also understand not wanting to dig their heels in or get pieces moving. As a homeowner and a citizen and a business owner and a significant economic impact to this community with 5 kids and a wife, my concern is does this continue to get kicked down the road with another excuse?
I can't answer for the city council. However, my opinion is that in some fashion, it will be dealt with because it needs to be dealt with. We need a
Correct.
vision for Cherry Lane
Right.
one way or another, and it will have public participation, both from people who are concerned and people who are in favor of development. And we will just have to make a decision that's determined to be the
just-
best for Graham.
Just make a mental note for yourselves. No, I'm a team player, so don't keep me out of it. Keep me in it.
Absolutely. We
I would
fully intend to
I
include
would be an
the,
ally, not an enemy. So
yeah, we want to include the concerned citizens of Cherry Lane as well as
Yep.
people like the Purdue and Icingers, even Intersect Development, even Windsor Commercial, Amazon, everybody's a stakeholder. So we want to make sure everybody comes to the table and we can have good conversations and try to figure out a reasonable solution moving forward.
So I learned a long time ago from my grandfather, who's still alive, and I talk to every morning, that actions speak louder than words. And I understand what you're saying, and I know that to be true. I'm not saying that you're that way. I'm saying as concerned citizens or business owners or stakeholders, as I look out, none of them come to these meetings, whether it's about this specific project or this city in general. If you're concerned or you want to be a stakeholder, you look at all aspects of this city, not just one piece as a selfish project to yourself. You get involved in the whole. So that's my thought process in regards to how I see development and economic growth and, you know, the economy and the population and residential and all that stuff. So, you know, keep that in the forefront of your decisions of how you think. So
Great point.
Thank you. Justin, I would like to add, if budget is approved, if we could move on this as quickly as possible,
The
the
intent-
sooner the better. This is gonna be a long, drawn out process. Nothing's gonna be quick, but I don't want it to look like the typical government job. 9 people watching you work.
No, you all got a point and tell me how to do it. No, the intent is to get the RFP out almost immediately. and-
Right.
And really start working. RFP is a request for proposals that we have to send out to hire a consultant to help work through the process and get acceptable bids that meet the dollar threshold that we have available. Correct, yes.
Mr. Wooten, any non-agenda item?
Nothing here.
Mr. Benesh?
I have none.
I don't have anything further. Mr. Chrisman? Mr. Huffines?
No, sir.
last thing, I'm sorry, I apologize. Hugo Kreischer, 2005 Cherry Lane. In regards to that consultant or that high-level consultant that does the R,
FP.
FP.
is there a way as us, as council members, planners, citizens, that it's someone that, you know, me personally, I'd want somebody that's either local, has family here, like somebody that's vested somehow. You know, I know you can't guarantee that, and I
We,
get that.
we can't by law do that, but we can,
really?
we have to look at their qualifications and determine which one's most qualified. And if typically we look at the lowest responsible bidder.
The lowest responsive what?
Responsible bidder. So the person that provides all the information that we've requested in our request for proposals.
Okay,
And the person who comes in at the lowest bid typically is how we operate.
so there's also a saying in life that cheap things are seldom
That's-
good.
So I said typically, so
Okay.
there is some wiggle room there. We
what you
just
pay
have
for.
to we go through an evaluation process. We do interviews, we do reference checks, almost like hiring an employee.
I
Because
understand.
in effect, we are hiring a contract employee. So
Correct, that's exactly. what
we take it very seriously and we go through it very detailed to make sure that the consultant is a good match for the city.
Does the community have a vote in that or
No.
a voice in that? No. Okay, thank you.
Thankfully, no.
So move.
Second.
Favor,
Oh,
aye.
you said.